this man, now I can still see him all those years ago, and it nearly always came up in the conversation about when he was 10 in the 1930 thing, and the strike had gone on for some time, and he was sent by his father to Liberty Hall for the food allowance thing, and he was given the bit of paper, which was the most precious thing they had. Without it, they had no food whatever, and it was pinned into his pocket, and he went down barefoot because he'd grown out of his shoes, and the shoes were handed on to his sister, and he's card is scrutinised kind of at the queue in Liberty Hall, and he's put on the queue and goes up through it, and they're nearly all women, and again another scrutiny at the thing at the top of it, and he gets his food, because he knows how bad things are at home, he starts to run, and he bashes into a woman coming in with a tray in the doorway, and everything on her tray falls, and all his grub falls too, and all the women ate him. And stupid eaters and whatever, was people hungry, and all that kind of thing, beat him. And a woman comes out of the room behind him and pushes him away from them. And then he finds himself standing at a table, and this tall, thin woman, and she just looks at him silently for a while, and he thinks she's going to take the ticket away, and that's it. There is nothing else. And she asks him, why were you running away from us? Which is not what he expected, And he used to think, and she's the British accent, she's the Countess. And I always remember this because he'd say it and the tears would be rolling down his cheeks. And he'd say, well, my ma is sick and she's crying. And my dad is sick and he's crying. But the baby doesn't cry anymore. And my two sisters, well, it's so cold and they've no clothes to go out, so they stay in bed. And the little one doesn't talk anymore. And she just takes that and reads into it how bad things are. And of course the young fella says, and they depended upon me. And he's let them down, kind of thing. And she says, again, like taking him by surprise, because he's to try and work out the English accent, kind of thing. Can you light a fire? And he's thinking, there's nothing left to burn. In the tenement room they live in Donnybrook Street, they've burned everything that could be burned. And even the legs of the bed. And he knows that he can light a fire, but there's nothing to light it with. And she says, we can give you some coal and the makings of a fire, and your own food parcel, that'll be okay. But what we need more really is heat, and then medical attention for the mother and the little one. And the next thing he finds himself running along with this big giant of a man mix something, and the man has a bag of coal over his shoulder and he's all pockets full of stuff, and the young fella's trying to keep up with him, and they get to the room in the tenement and there's hardly any stairs left. You have to go on one side of the staircase. And I always thought this was sort of interesting. He said to the young fella, I want you to go in first and tell your father Madam's compliments, and she'll call when things are better. Which I suppose gave the father his authority, and that it was from that end rather than kind of the proselytising end, I assume. But anyway, in a few minutes they have a fire lighting and the tea made and bread and jam. And the man mixes warm milk with breadcrumbs for the young one who's really has given up the will to live. And the Countess has said that, they always called her Madam, they never used the word Countess, had said that would be a nurse and a doctor the following morning because it would take a while to get things together, and there'd be blankets as well, and what they could produce kind of to make things easier. And I always remember him saying, you know, and you could imagine they'd have no light either, and that night the fire still cast a kind of glow, and there was a glow of hope and peace and people caring. And the next morning the Kathleen Lynn and the nurse arrived, and the mother had mastitis, so she couldn't feed the baby. It was a fairly newborn baby, and the baby was, I suppose, dying really. And the father could do nothing, the mother could do nothing, and the youngest child had given up and he wished to live. So they brought them back, and the man always ended up by saying, with tears flowing, you know, I'm a grandfather now, and none of us would have existed only for that woman, and I'd give me life for her and everything I have, willingly. And he always ended the story, the friends would be sort of giving him a cigarette and patting his back and saying it'd be all right, you know. But he totally believed that just that visit that he did as a 10-year-old saved his family, and it was the woman that provided the means.